Dr. Wallace, it is a great joy and pleasure to have this time with you. Thanks for carving out the time for us to talk about these really great, I think, themes and topics for young people, for families too. And so I'm excited for this conversation.
Oh, thank you for having me, Dr. Mitnaul. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Thanks. So, Dr. Wallace, for our people that are viewing the show, can you tell us a little bit about your role at WSU and just your career and to help us familiarize them with what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, thank you. So I've been teaching at the university level for about the last 14 years. I've taught at several universities across the country, and at the same time, I've been a professional performer as a horn player, so performing with symphony orchestras, chamber music, things of that nature. Excuse me, I just completed my 5th year here at Wichita State University.
Okay. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a wonderful place to work. We love Wichita.
Awesome.
It's just been a great experience. And especially in the past year, I feel like the leadership here within the School of Music and at the university in general, they've really done an amazing job, I think, just working to meet the needs of the students, the faculty, and the staff. And so it's a really a great place to be. In terms of my responsibilities here at the university, my primary role is I am the professor of French horn. Okay. And so I teach lessons to music majors. So last fall I had 13 French horn majors that I was working with one-on-one each week. Okay. And then I also do some smaller classes for the music education area of our department. And then I teach a first-year seminar class for incoming students in the fall generally, and that's called Music Makes You Smarter. And it's kind of a broad class dealing with current trends in science and medicine and music and how all of those things, where's the intersection of those topics.
Music in many ways I think of as being, ultimately a communal thing. And whether it's a solo, someone giving a solo, who the goal is for it to move the hearts of people in the audience, or for an ensemble to be playing together, it's communal. And I imagine there were some, limitations on doing that or expressing that to its fullest extent. And I guess, how did you see that affecting maybe some of the young people who you train and mentor through this year? And I guess from your perspective too, how did that look, I guess, going through this year?
Yeah, so I think this is a great question and a really important topic. The students, so my role is to help the students develop their skills on their instrument, and then they take that into these larger ensembles, whether that's a band or a symphony orchestra or a chamber music group. And those ensembles had to function under some pretty strict protocols this year. And so like 30 minutes in one room, break, move to another room for 30 minutes because of aerosol production, right?
Right.
And so there was all kinds of restrictions, things they had to think about. Again, they were carefully calculating every move that they have to make. And we lose a little bit of spontaneity there, perhaps. Okay. And one of the things that I think is important, regardless of the subject matter, but especially in the arts and the performing arts, is we have to be present and we have to be vulnerable. Both the teacher and the student, if we're going to have a full experience, especially working in music. And so those were the two things that were really at the top of my priority list in every interaction that I had with every student. And so I kind of made a commitment to myself that was going to be, those were going to be my two priorities for the whole school year. Okay. And put that first and then let the subject matter follow. Sure. And so that's kind of how I personally handle that. In terms of the impact on the students of the large ensemble experience being different, they weren't able to perform for live audiences until the very end of the school year. Okay. So they're performing for a camera. Sure. Okay. Which is its own skill. Sure. And I think they did a wonderful job with, but it's maybe not the same sort of relaxed, kind of intensified atmosphere, intensified emotionally, but relaxed in terms of, seeing your family and friends out there, and that can be very inspiring for the students. So a little bit different.
And I like the themes that you mentioned about great performance. I think you use the terms kind of being vulnerable, right, and being open and honest. And so, were there moments too where you were seeing maybe the weight of just on the emotion side of things, or feeling like they weren't able to express themselves in a live audience type of setting too, that had some impact on students? Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's very, very perceptive, I think, just, thinking along those lines. So one of the things that I noticed with the students is we didn't have as many performances. So they would go longer periods without performing, and then it might be for a live stream, camera. And so when we did perform in front of people, again, this is nothing new, but music students deal with performance anxiety.
Sure,
we just do, and so do the professionals. And so that became a little bit more significant, I think, of an issue for a lot of folks. And it's just keeping fresh, and the more you do something, the more comfortable you are with it, the more relaxed and the more expressive you're going to be. And so that's something that I think as we come out of this era. As a teacher, I just want to be, as encouraging as I can possibly be, and also to give the students as many opportunities as possible to perform in front of a live audience.
Okay, yeah. And being and working in such a creative medium, I'm sure you had to come up with and think of some creative ways to do that, to both respecting the guidelines and guidances, but also being able to be present and injecting some amount of spontaneity or injecting it with a little bit of life. So can you tell us about some of the creative approaches you took to kind of bring that in?
Sure, yeah. So at the beginning of the school year, while the weather was still relatively nice, we did some outdoor French horn ensemble rehearsals, and then we did some pop-up concerts around campus. So we just chose 3 or 4 locations and went and performed for anybody that was walking by. And it was fun.
Idea.
It reminded us of why we do what we do.
Right, yeah.
And then during the kind of winter months, I had a lot of virtual guests visit us from as far away as Costa Rica.
Wow.
Folks that are professors at universities across the country. We had a gentleman from the Philadelphia Orchestra. So it was really kind of a fun opportunity to interact with a lot of different professionals in the field.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the things I did in terms of curriculum design. In terms of individual interactions with students, I've always sort of tried to put wellness and mental health first. So I always ask a student how they're doing.
Sure.
I want to make sure those channels are open for communication when we start a lesson. But it was a little different this year, as you can imagine. And so those conversations became longer and maybe more involved than they might have otherwise been. And so, that was my goal, was to be present, to be vulnerable, and then to keep those communication channels open. And
Beautiful.
So that's sort of how I approach that, whether it was over Zoom or in person.
Right. Well, and I think that's really neat. You mentioned just the range of people that you were able to tap into. So that's one of those, maybe blessings of the year, is that, now the exposure and getting time with these greats from kind of all over. And so you were able to take something that can sometimes feel maybe kind of flat or a muted experience, and you made it deeper by doing that extra to pull in, great people from all over. I mean, that seems really, really special that you're able to do that for the students that you work with. So
it was wonderful, and it wouldn't have happened without the generosity of all of those people from across the country and even internationally that had some time on their hands because orchestras weren't performing generally, and so they were volunteering their time. It wasn't like we were opening up the it was the music community is interdependent. We need each other, and we're here to support one another.
I'm glad that you mentioned that too, because I think part of wellness and this theme of community too is that often I find in clinical work that when people are struggling, they feel like they're the only ones, and often that's sometimes the hardest time to reach out or ask for help or say, would you mind doing this extra thing that's might be enriching or help me to meet a particular need. And it sounds like you didn't have that type of hesitation, and I think that sounds like a really great model for ways to respond when people are feeling, maybe in the corner or have some fear about reaching out to people or acknowledging that, hey, this is a really weird year, this is a really weird time. Are you willing to to help, in that scenario. I think often what my patients are often surprised by is sometimes I'll have them do this where they pretend to be the friend, who is being asked to do something extra, to, make that extra phone call or do that extra thing, and they can reflect often how good that feels. So I imagine the people that you reached out to had that same feeling that, they were doing something good for you and for the students here, but it probably did something for them as well. Did you get feedback from them along that line?
Absolutely, yeah. And that was the type of feedback I generally got was, as musicians, as lifelong learners, we all are in our craft. It was a great reminder of who we are and what we've trained to be, and this opportunity to share this expertise that we've developed and we love. We love this music. We love what we do. We love working with students and with colleagues, and that's just one of the most exciting things about being in the arts generally. I would say is, and that's true whether it's here at the university or with the Symphony or Music Theater Wichita. Any of these organizations is again this interdependence. The cast can't create their most beautiful song without the orchestra, and we don't have a job without them. So I mean, just that recognition of we need each other. And it's valuable. What beautiful. These people have to say is valuable, and we learn from the students. Those of us who are faculty and professional performers, we're learning things constantly from working with the students, and we try to convey that to them. And hopefully they believe us most of the time. So.
I'm sure they felt it. I'm feeling it now. So, you mentioned in a conversation before we sat down about maybe a warm up or practice that involved kind of breathing, which I thought was really, really neat. Would you mind kind of describing what it is that you did and what that looked like?
Okay, great. Yeah. So dating back to when I was a student myself, I had a teacher who, when I would come into a lesson, if I wasn't playing with my most beautiful sound, sort of calm and in that vulnerable present state that we talked about, he would just say, let's put our horns down. He would take me through a little breathing meditation, often referred to as a centering exercise. And so once I sort of got into my professional career, I studied this a little bit more intensively. There's an author and peak performance psychologist named Don Green out in Southern California. He's got some great books out there, and also has worked with musicians a lot. And so when I lived in the Northeast, I had an opportunity to go to some master classes he was giving. Nice. And I've used these all along, and I've shared them with students over the years. But this year, it had a little bit more impact, I think, because everyone's kind of carrying around a little bit of accumulated stress. What can we do? What can't we do? The kind of social isolation. And so one of the exercises that I like to share with my students is just to sit calmly and breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth for a few minutes and just kind of body map. And just go around, trace up and down your spine, down to your feet, to the top of your head, and just release tension. And that's really all it is. And Don Green, in his research, when he was a PhD student at San Diego State University, he worked with a SWAT team. He worked with Army Rangers. He worked with musicians. He worked with people in business trying to close big financial deals. And so it's a way to just sharpen your focus and be present and do your best, really. So.
That's beautiful. So in terms of looking towards the future and, projects and things that you're working on in kind of this post-pandemic time where we're getting to do and enjoy and appreciate some of those things that we didn't get to do as much, what's on the table for you? What kind of things are you thinking about, dreaming about these days?
Oh, well, it's a wonderful feeling, isn't it? I think we can all agree on that. It really is. And fortunately, here in Wichita, the arts are back. I think I've had concerts for the last 5 weeks in a row. With 3 different organizations, and it has just been fantastic for us as performers, but also just to see the community out and together and just enjoying just that social experience. And so at the moment, I'm actually running a community summer horn ensemble. And so we're rehearsing and preparing for a concert in Wiedemann Hall here at Wichita State.
Okay.
It's going to be 21 French horn players, age 14 to about 50. And they sound great. And everybody's just, having a wonderful time being together, hearing each other's sounds, interacting, being spontaneous.
Okay.
It's great. And there's also numerous orchestra and music theater productions coming up that I'll be a part of. So it's a joy, and it feels great to sort of be looking ahead to the future.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Wallace, you are such a gem. I do really appreciate that, that we got to carve out some time from your thankfully busy music, agenda to really talk about, mental wellness and the contributions that music really plays to that for so many of us. So Dr. Wallace, again, thank you so much for joining us on the show today. And why don't we go take a listen at some of this amazing music?